The fluorescent lights of Mercy Ridge General Hospital's trauma wing hummed their cold, indifferent song at 2:47 in the morning. Blood had pooled beneath the surgical lamps, spreading across the linoleum in dark, arterial rivers, while a 19-year-old boy convulsed on the operating table. Monitors screamed, nurses scrambled. Somewhere beyond the double doors, a mother's wail sliced through the clinical noise like a blade through skin. But in the corner of Trauma Bay 7, a woman stood perfectly still. She was slender, unremarkable at first glance. Ash blonde hair tied back in a regulation bun. White scrubs spotless despite the carnage that had turned the floor into something resembling a battlefield. Her pale grey eyes were fixed on the dying boy, with an intensity that didn't match the blank expression she wore like a second skin. She didn't flinch when the monitors erupted into that single sustained shriek. She didn't move when Dr. Patricia Alvarez, 15-year veteran of emergency trauma surgery, slammed her fist against the steel table and stepped back in defeat. She simply waited. And when the boy's heart finally stopped, when every machine fell silent and the room collectively accepted the inevitable, Anna Brennan walked forward without permission, pressed both trembling hands against the kid's blood-soaked chest, and brought him back from the dead. Her name, the one she used now, was Anna Brennan. She had worked the overnight shift at Mercy Ridge General for 6 consecutive years without calling in sick once. She arrived on time, left without being thanked, and spent the hours in between catching medication errors, stabilizing dying patients, and absorbing abuse from physicians who treated her like expensive hospital furniture. Nobody asked Anna for her opinion. Nobody noticed that half the patients who coded under her care somehow pulled through against every statistical probability. "Brennan, grab me another IV kit." Dr. Marcus Holloway snapped one Tuesday evening without looking up from the tablet he was scrolling through, blood still crusting beneath his fingernails from the previous case. Holloway was a second-year resident whose confidence had been engineered entirely from privilege and positive reinforcement. He had never been wrong, mostly because he had never been corrected by anyone willing to face the consequences. "And try not to contaminate it this time," he added. Anna didn't bother pointing out that she hadn't contaminated anything the time before, or the time before that. She pulled a fresh kit from the supply cart and handed it over with the practiced silence of someone who had long ago calculated the precise cost of speaking up. "Jesus." Holloway glanced at her sideways. "You're like a ghost. Do you ever talk?" "When there's something worth saying." He laughed and turned to the nearest resident. "You hear that? Ice Queen has jokes." Anna walked away before he could see the muscle tighten in her jaw. The hospital administrator, Gerald Vance, called her into his office at 2 in the morning on a Thursday. He was a former pharmaceutical sales representative who had climbed the administrative ladder through a combination of cost-cutting and the strategic firing of anyone who questioned his methods. His suit was expensive and didn't quite fit. His face was flushed with the particular shade of anger belonging to men who had spent their entire careers overcompensating. He didn't offer her a chair. "3 doctors filed complaints about you this month," he said, holding up a folder like a weapon. "Holloway says you corrected his medication dosage in front of a patient's family. Chen says you questioned her discharge decision on a patient who came back 2 days later with sepsis. And Gould says you physically blocked him from leaving a trauma bay." "The patient had a brain bleed," Anna replied quietly. "He would have died. That is not your call to make. My call is to keep people alive." Vance leaned forward, his voice dropping into something meaner. "You think 6 years buys you respect around here? You are replaceable? Every person in this building is replaceable. And you are making it very easy for me to start with you." He straightened, smoothing the front of his ill-fitting jacket. 2 weeks. Keep your head down, stop undermining the doctors, and maybe you get to keep your job. 1 more complaint, and you're gone." "Understood." "Good. Get out." She left without another word. She returned to her floor, checked on her patients, adjusted IV lines, and absorbed the quiet gratitude of a middle-aged man's wife who whispered, You've been so kind, with the desperation of someone who had run out of people to thank. Anna gave her a small, exhausted smile and moved on. But as she had adjusted the man's IV line, her fingers had grazed his wrist. And something had reached out from somewhere inside her. Something that had no clinical name, threading through damaged tissue and coaxing it to heal faster than physiology permitted. The monitor alarm, which had been hovering at the edge of sounding, settled back into a steady rhythm. The man's color improved. His breathing eased. Anna pulled her hand away quickly and left the room with her heart hammering against her ribs. 3 nights later, the city put 5 cars into each other on Interstate 94, and the damage came pouring through Mercy Ridge's emergency entrance in waves. Every trauma bay was active. Every physician was running. The nursing staff moved through the chaos with the controlled desperation of people who had stopped counting hours and started counting heartbeats. "Brennan, Bay 7, gunshot wound to the chest, 19-year-old male, he's crashing." Anna grabbed a crash cart and ran. The boy on the table was barely old enough to shave. His chest had been shredded by a bullet that had treated human anatomy as an inconvenience. Blood soaked through gauze pads faster than the nurses could replace them. The surgical team was already losing the war. "We're losing him!" Dr. Alvarez's voice carried the taut edge of someone who had seen everything and was seeing it again, worse. "Someone get me Oneg now!" Anna worked without thinking. She prepped the transfusion line while another nurse hunted for a viable vein. Holloway hovered near the head of the table, his usual arrogance stripped away by the rawness of watching someone die in real time. "He's not responding," Holloway said. "We're not going to save him." "Shut up and help me," Alvarez snapped. But the boy's body had already decided. His heart rate plummeted. The monitors gave one final warning shriek and then went flat. A single sustained note that meant exactly what it sounded like. "No," Anna said. Everyone turned to look at her. She moved to the side of the table without asking permission. She placed both hands on the boy's chest, closed her eyes, and pressed down. The room went silent, except for that terrible tone. The temperature dropped. The fluorescent lights flickered once, then stabilized, and beneath Anna's hands, the dead boy's chest moved. The flat line stuttered, hiccuped, then erupted back into a chaotic, living rhythm. The boy gasped, his back arched, his eyes snapped open in blind, animal terror. "Jesus Christ!" Holloway stumbled backward into a tray of instruments, sending metal clattering across the floor. Dr. Alvarez stood frozen, her surgical gloves still dripping. "That's not possible." But the monitors said otherwise. His heart was beating. Blood was circulating. Every machine in Bay 7 was screaming the same impossible story. The boy was alive. Anna pulled her hands away. Her entire body was shaking now. She looked down at the kid, who stared up at her with eyes that had just returned from somewhere none of the living had a name for. "Combat Angel," he whispered. His voice scraped raw. "You came back." The room erupted. Anna stood at the center of the chaos, perfectly still. She recognized the boy. She had saved his life before, 12 years ago, halfway around the world. By sunrise, Mercy Ridge General Hospital had become a rumor mill operating at the speed of human terror. The ghost nurse who brought the dead back to life. The woman with ice in her eyes and something supernatural in her hands. The staff fractured into camps. Those who called it a miracle, those who called it a hoax, and a smaller, quieter group who simply crossed themselves when they passed her in the hall. Gerald Vance called Anna into his office before her shift ended. This time he looked scared, which was worse. "Whatever you did in that trauma bay last night," he said, his voice tight with the effort of controlling something he didn't understand. "I can't have that kind of liability in my hospital. You're suspended, effective immediately. 2 weeks without pay while we investigate. You're suspending me for saving someone's life. I'm suspending you for creating a PR nightmare. And if you talk to the press, you'll never work in medicine again." Anna left without arguing. She walked to her car, made it halfway across the parking lot, and then her legs gave out. She leaned against the side of an ambulance and pressed her hands over her face and tried to remember how to breathe. Combat Angel. Nobody had called her that in 12 years. Nobody was supposed to remember that name at all.
She drove to a diner on the edge of the city and sat in a back booth with untouched black coffee, trying to build something rational out of the rubble of the last 24 hours. The suspension wasn't the problem. She had survived worse. The problem was the 2 words the boy had spoken. The crack they had opened in the wall she had spent 12 years mortaring into place. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Alvarez. "We need to talk. Not at the hospital." Anna deleted it. She drove home to her apartment, climbed 3 flights of stairs, and froze in her doorway.
Someone had been inside. The signs were small, a coat hanging at a slightly different angle, a book moved an inch to the left, the kind of details only someone trained to notice would catch. She swept the apartment room by room, cast iron skillet in hand, and found nothing, except a manila envelope on her kitchen table. No address, no stamp. Just her name in block letters across the front. Lieutenant Anna Brennan. Not Anna. Lieutenant. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No letterhead, no signature. 4 lines of text. Lines of, "They know who you are. They know what happened in Kandahar. The patient from last night wasn't random. Get out. Now." She read it 3 times. Then she grabbed the go-bag she had never stopped keeping packed in her closet, an old military habit, and was halfway to the door when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. "Lieutenant Brennan." The voice was male, clipped, professional, military. "My name is Captain David Cross. Army Intelligence. We need you to come in immediately." "I'm not in the Army anymore." "With respect, ma'am, we both know that's not exactly true." A pause. "The boy you saved last night, Private Marcus Webb. He was part of a classified operation that went sideways 3 months ago. He wasn't supposed to survive his injuries. And last night he died on that table and you brought him back. You understand how many questions that raises?" "I did my job." "No, ma'am, you did something we don't have a protocol for." Cross's voice softened almost imperceptibly. "Come in. Federal building downtown, 2 hours. Come alone. If you don't, others will come looking for you, and they won't be as polite about it." The line went dead. Anna stood in her apartment with the go-bag on her shoulder, and the warning note crumpled in her fist. Every trained instinct told her to run, to dissolve into the city, to become someone else the way she had done before. But if they knew about Kandahar, running wouldn't save her. It hadn't worked for 12 years. It wasn't going to start working now. She put the go-bag down. Then she picked it back up, and she drove to Mercy Ridge General Hospital. She parked in the visitor lot and watched the emergency entrance through her windshield. 2 black SUVs with tinted windows appeared first, men in dark suits who moved with the precise efficiency of people who had never been told no. Then, before she could process what she was seeing, actual army trucks roared into the ambulance bay, sirens overlapping each other, soldiers jumping out before the vehicles stopped moving. Whatever this was, it had stopped being subtle. They were carrying a stretcher, a patient wrapped in field dressings, unconscious, hemorrhaging through the bandages. Armed soldiers surrounded the gurney as they pushed through the emergency entrance. Anna's phone buzzed. "They're dying. You're the only one who can stop it." Cross. She looked at the entrance. She looked at her hands. Then she grabbed her medical bag from the trunk and ran toward the building. The ER had become a military theater. Soldiers blocked every exit. Federal agents argued with hospital security. Patients and family members had been evacuated to the waiting area, and the trauma wing had been stripped down to essential staff and whatever was currently dying on its tables. Anna slipped through a side staff entrance. In white scrubs, she was invisible again, just another nurse in the organized chaos. She made her way to Bay 7. Through the window, she saw Dr. Alvarez working frantically over a man in his mid-40s wearing the shredded remains of special operations gear. His chest had been opened by shrapnel. 2 other soldiers were being treated in adjacent bays. A guard at the door stopped her. "I'm a trauma nurse. Dr. Alvarez called for additional support." A radio check. A nod. The door swung open. Alvarez looked up when Anna entered and visibly exhaled. "Brennan, thank God. I don't care what Vance said. I need you on this." "What happened?" "What?" "Military transport was ambushed 40 miles outside the city. These are special forces operators. High-value targets. The one on this table is their commanding officer, and he is running out of time." Anna checked the monitors. Blood pressure in freefall. Heart rate erratic. Minutes, maybe less. "We're losing him," a resident said, panic cracking his voice. "No, we're not," Alvarez said. But the desperation underneath the words was audible to anyone listening carefully. The officer's body convulsed once, then went still. The flatline tone filled the bay. Anna stepped forward. She pushed the resident aside, placed her hands on the officer's chest, and closed her eyes. The sensation washed over her immediately, that dive into cold, dark water, searching for the thread of life that hadn't yet been cut completely. The temperature dropped 10 degrees, every light in the bay flickered, and the officer's eyes snapped open. He grabbed her wrist with a grip that should have been impossible for a man who'd just been clinically dead. His eyes were wild, unfocused. Then recognition flooded across his weathered face, followed immediately by something that looked like terror. "No," he gasped. "You're dead. I watched you die." Anna stared down at him. She recognized him. Colonel James Harlow.
Because I wasn't strong enough yet, she's the man who had left her behind in Kandahar. The man who had signed her death certificate and buried the truth about what had happened in that field hospital 12 years ago. He was looking up at her like a ghost had crawled out of his worst nightmare. Alvarez cleared the room at Harlow's order, herding the shocked resident and the paralyzed sergeant out ahead of her. She stripped her gloves off with sharp, furious movements. "If you die because you're too stupid to let me do my job, that is on you," she told Harlow. Then she pointed at Anna. "Brennan, when this is over, you and I are going to have a very long conversation." The door slammed. They were alone. Harlow pushed himself upright, despite the blood still seeping through his bandages. He looked older than Anna remembered. The intervening 12 years had carved themselves into his face with remarkable thoroughness. "You should be dead," he said flatly. "So should you." 20 seconds ago, his jaw tightened. "What are you?" "The same thing. I was in Kandahar. A medic who saves people." Anna crossed her arms, fighting to keep her voice level. "Though you didn't seem to care much about that when you left me bleeding out in that field. Hospital. We evacuated everyone we could. You made a choice." The words came out sharper than she intended. "You decided some lives were worth saving and some weren't. I just happened to land in the wrong column." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm, proof of life, evidence of the impossible. "Explain it to me," Anna said. "Why did you file a Kia report before you even confirmed there was a body? Why did you classify everything so deep that nobody could ask questions?" Harlow met her eyes. "Because that's what I was ordered to do." The admission hit her like cold water. She had spent 12 years building elaborate versions of this confrontation in her head. Intricate scripts where Harlow offered justifications she could tear apart, where justice was a clean and satisfying thing. She had never once considered the simplest explanation that he had just been following orders, the way every soldier in every chain of command had done since the beginning of organized war. People above my pay grade. People who decided that what happened in Kandahar needed to stay classified for national security reasons. He looked at her steadily. "They told me you were a liability. What you could do made you too dangerous to bring home, so you killed me on paper instead. I saved your life." The words came out ragged. "I'd brought you back. They would have disappeared you into some black site medical program. At least this way, you gotta walk away." Anna wanted to shout at him. She wanted to dismantle him piece by piece. But somewhere beneath the 12 years of fury was a terrible, reluctant understanding. The logic of it, however brutal, was real. Dead soldiers didn't get experimented on. Dead soldiers got buried with honors and forgotten. Living weapons got dissected. Before she could respond, the trauma bay doors burst open, and Captain David Cross walked in. He was younger than his voice had suggested, early 30s, desk-built. Carrying a tablet and the confident stride of someone who had memorized exactly how much authority he wielded. Colonel Harlow, Lieutenant Brennan. He nodded to each of them. "I'm glad you're both alive. Makes my job considerably easier." Cross pulled up a document on his tablet, classification stamps stacked like armor. He showed them a photograph of Private Marcus Webb lying in a hospital bed, tubes and monitors running from his body. "Webb was part of your unit in Afghanistan," Cross continued. "He was 7 years old when the Kandahar incident occurred. But his older brother, Staff Sergeant Tyler Webb, was one of the soldiers killed during the ambush that destroyed Lieutenant Brennan's field hospital." Anna felt her stomach drop. This Cross continued, pulling up a grainy photograph, is Webb's uncle. Raymond Webb, former Army intelligence officer, dishonorably discharged 8 years ago for selling classified information to foreign contractors. He disappeared after his discharge. We assumed he'd gone permanently underground. Cross looked at Anna. Until 3 days ago, when his nephew miraculously survived unsurvivable injuries, and a nurse with a very specific skill set brought him back from clinical death. "He orchestrated the ambush," Harlow said slowly. "Timed it to force you into this hospital specifically," Cross confirmed. "He wanted you both in the same room. He wanted Lieutenant Brennan to do exactly what she did, bring you back. Colonel, so you'd have to face what you buried 12 years ago. This is revenge." Simple, methodical, and very precisely planned. The trauma bay doors burst open again. An agent spoke into his radio. His expression shifted from alert to alarmed. "Sir, we've got a situation in the parking structure. Multiple armed subjects, military-grade weapons," and then the lights went out. Emergency lighting bathed Base 7 in sickly red. Somewhere in the building, alarms began to scream. Then came the sound Anna had hoped never to hear again inside a hospital, the sharp, controlled percussion of gunfire. Cross's team locked the door, pushed a crash cart against it, killed the emergency lights, and plunged the room into near-total darkness. "All teams, converge on Bay 7, Cross said into his radio, his voice taut. ETA. 8 minutes. Harlow, who should not have been able to stand, was standing. He had taken a scalpel from the surgical tray and held it the way a man holds something he knows exactly how to use. "Lock it down," he said. "If they're coming for us, let's make them earn it." The doors exploded inward. The crash cart went flying. 3 men in tactical gear stormed through the opening, weapons already firing. The first federal agent went down immediately. Second managed to return fire wild, desperate shots before 2 rounds took him off his feet. Cross dove behind the surgical table. Harlow threw himself sideways, his wounded body barely moving fast enough. Anna pressed herself flat against the floor. One of the attackers moved deeper into the room, his tactical light sweeping methodically across the darkness. She saw his finger begin to travel toward the trigger. She didn't think, she just moved. Anna lunged forward, grabbed the rifle barrel, wrenched it upward as he fired. The shot punched through acoustic ceiling tiles. She drove her knee into the man's abdomen, ripped the weapon free when he doubled over, and swung it into the side of his head. He went down hard. The second attacker pivoted. Cross was faster. 2 shots, center mass. The third man backed toward the door, his weapon tracking between Anna and Cross, calculating odds. Harlow made the calculation irrelevant. He launched himself off the floor, tackling the attacker into the hallway in a controlled collision that ended in a burst of rifle fire and then silence. Cross scrambled upright and moved toward the hallway, unfollowed. Harlow lay on the floor with the dead attacker across his legs. Blood pooled beneath them both, too much, spreading too fast. A new wound, worse than the shrapnel injuries. A bullet through his lower abdomen that was doing things to his internal architecture that didn't have good solutions. Medic. Cross pressed both hands against the wound. "I need a medic now." "I'm right here," Anna said quietly. She knelt. She placed her hands over Cross's. She felt for the damage beneath the blood and torn muscle, and found it. The femoral artery compromised. Blood pressure already falling. Heart beginning to struggle against the arithmetic of loss. "Move," she told Cross. He moved. Anna pressed both palms directly against the wound and dove into the dark water. The temperature in the hallway dropped so fast that frost crystallized on the walls, spreading outward from where she knelt in patterns that looked almost botanical, as if something alive were growing from the cold. The emergency lighting died. The corridor went black, except for a faint luminescence that seemed to originate from Anna's hands. Cross stumbled backward. What the hell? Shut up and let her work. Harlow's voice was barely audible. He was staring up at her face, and despite the pain, there was something in his expression that might have been wonder. I forgot what this looked like. She felt the torn artery knitting itself closed. Felt damaged muscle tissue beginning to regenerate. Felt Harlow's body responding to something that no medical school had ever named and no textbook had ever described. But it was consuming her. Her vision blurred. Her hands felt like they were burning from the inside. She could hear someone calling her name from very far away. She could feel herself starting to collapse sideways, but she couldn't stop. Not until she was sure. Not yet. The world tilted. Everything went black. Anna woke to sunlight. Her palms were wrapped in white bandages. Her body felt like the aftermath of a car accident. Captain Cross sat in the chair beside her bed, his neat appearance rumpled, his tie loosened, dark circles marking the hours he hadn't slept. 6 hours, he said. Harlow's in the ICU. He's alive. The doctors can't explain the rate of healing, but they've stopped asking questions. He held up his tablet. K-News headline read, "Terrorist attack at Mercy Ridge General Hospital. 5 dead, 12 wounded." Official story is armed suspects attempted to kidnap Colonel Harlow as part of a domestic terrorism operation. Federal agents neutralized the threat. No mention of you, Raymond Webb. Cross's face darkened, still in the wind.
He
coordinated the attack remotely. He wasn't on site. And now that his operation failed, we have to assume he escalates. So I'm bait. You're the target. Cross corrected. Webb blames you for his brother's death. He won't stop until one of you is gone. Anna stared at the ceiling. What happens now? We move you to a secure facility. Protection in exchange for cooperation with our investigation into your abilities. You want to study me? We want to understand. The last time someone wanted to understand me, Anna said, very quietly, Colonel Harlow buried me alive to keep them from succeeding. So, you'll forgive me if I'm not rushing to climb into your secure facility. Cross didn't have an answer for that. The door opened. Gerald Vance walked in. It looked like he had aged a decade overnight. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His arrogance was gone, not misplaced, but genuinely absent, as if it had been surgically removed and replaced with something rawer and less comfortable. Brennan. He stopped near the foot of the bed, his hands clasped together. I need to apologize. If you're here to fire me again, I'm here because 5 people died in this hospital. 2 of them were nurses I hired personally, his voice held together by will alone. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what you'd done. I treated you like garbage because you made me feel incompetent. That's not my fault. No, it's mine. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket and set it on the bedside table. My resignation letter, effective immediately. And before I go, the board knows everything. When this is over, there's a nursing supervisor position here for as long as you want it. Your own team, whatever you need. He straightened. It's the least I can do. He left before she could respond. Cross watched the door close. That was unexpected. People surprise you when they're forced to face consequences. Anna looked at her bandaged hands. Doesn't mean I forgive him. Fair enough, Cross stood. Try to rest. We'll talk when you're stronger. He was halfway to the door when she stopped him. Cross, he turned back. Harlow said someone above his pay grade ordered him to bury me in Kandahar. Do you know who gave that order? A pause. I have suspicions. Is that person still giving orders? Yes. Then I'm not going anywhere with you. She held his gaze steadily. Whoever wanted me disappeared 12 years ago probably still wants me disappeared. The moment I walk into your secure facility, I become a lab experiment instead of a person. Cross opened his mouth, closed it, stood there wrestling with something for a long moment. Finally, you're right. Can't guarantee your safety inside or outside. Webb is still out there. Then I'll handle Webb myself. How? By giving him exactly what he wants. Anna met Cross's eyes and let him see the cold, patient fury she usually kept behind the blank expression. A chance to kill me face to face. He looked genuinely alarmed. That's suicide. Maybe, or maybe it's the only way this ends without more people getting hurt. She gestured toward the door. Get out. I need to sleep before I do something stupid. He left. She waited until his footsteps faded. Then she pulled the bandages off her hands. The skin underneath was unmarked, pale and ordinary. The way skin looks when it has nothing to do with the power it sometimes channels. She had been running for 12 years. Hiding, performing normality for an audience that barely noticed her. And all of it had landed her here. A hospital bed, a target on her back. And 3 people dead who had come to the wrong place at the wrong time. Enough. Anna swung her legs off the bed, found her clothes in the bathroom locker, and walked out of the room without telling anyone she was leaving. Her phone buzzed in the parking lot. Unknown number. 3 lines of text. You want to end this? Come alone. Tonight. An address followed an abandoned factory on the edge of Detroit's industrial wasteland. If you bring anyone, I start killing hospital workers one by one until you show up anyway. Anna stared at the message for a long time. Then she deleted it, climbed into her car, and drove toward the address where Raymond Webb was waiting for her. The factory was a tombstone for American industry. 3 stories of rusted steel and shattered windows. Chain-link fence collapsed at intervals like a man who had given up standing. Anna parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, moving through the kind of shadows that only industrial wastelands could produce. She carried a tactical flashlight from her emergency kit and a folding knife from the glove compartment. Neither would do much against a trained intelligence operative, but holding them steadied her hands. The main entrance hung open. She stepped inside. You came alone. It's a voice from somewhere above, calm and conversational. I'm honestly surprised. She pointed the flashlight toward the sound and caught movement on the second-floor catwalk. You said you'd kill people if I didn't, and you believed me. Men like you don't bluff. Commit. Raymond Webb stepped into the light. He was in his early 50s, built like someone who had refused to let discipline lapse after leaving the military. His face was weathered and hard, with the eyes of a man who had stopped registering other people as fully human some time ago. Do you have any idea what this means? She whispered. That's what makes you dangerous, he said. Smart. I see why you survived Kandahar. When everyone else in that field hospital died, he paused. My brother Tyler was one of that everyone else. In case you forgot, I didn't forget. I tried to save him, but you failed. Webb's voice remained perfectly level. And then you saved yourself instead, crawled away and hid, while the rest of the unit got slaughtered. I was bleeding out from 3 bullet wounds. Harlow evacuated the mobile patients and left the rest behind. Tyler was already dead before I could reach him. Convenient story. Webb's expression hardened. I've seen the classified reports. I know what you can do. I've watched you bring people back from clinical death twice in 3 days. So explain to me why you couldn't do that for Tyler. The question hung in the stale air between them. Anna had asked herself the same thing 1,000 times over 12 years, turning it over in the long, fluorescent-lit hours of overnight shifts, examining it from every angle until the guilt became something she could carry without being crushed by it.
Said finally, what I can do. It grew over time. 12 years ago, I could stabilize wounds, accelerate healing, keep people alive long enough to reach real care. But bringing someone back after their heart stops, that's different. That requires something more, and I didn't have it when your brother needed it. So he died because you were inadequate. He died because we were ambushed in a war zone. That's not inadequacy. That's combat. Webb's eyes darkened. Don't lecture me about combat. I spent 20 years in Army intelligence watching good soldiers die because politicians made decisions for reasons that had nothing to do with those soldiers' lives. Tyler was supposed to be safe. That field hospital was supposed to be secure. And then someone sold our position for cash. And my brother got shot in the spine and bled to death on a dirt floor while you crawled away. Anna heard the grief under the anger, recognized it as something she had felt herself too many times to count. Raw, persistent, the kind of grief that never metabolized cleanly because it had nowhere to go. I'm sorry about your brother, she said. But killing me won't bring him back. No, Webb agreed, almost gently. But it'll make sure you can't save anyone else while better people stay dead. He moved fast for a man his age, pistol drawn, 3 shots in quick succession. Anna dove. The flashlight flew from her hand. She hit the concrete floor hard, rolled behind a stack of rotting pallets, and fumbled for her knife while Webb's footsteps tracked across the catwalk overhead. You know what the worst part is? He kept talking as he circled, a man who had thought about this for a long time and had things to say. Harlow got to live. The man who abandoned an entire medical unit got promoted, got medals, got to keep pretending he made the right call, and my nephew Marcus had to grow up without his uncle, and Tyler came home in a sealed casket because there wasn't enough left of him to show. Another shot close. Splinters erupted near Anna's face. And then you show up, Webb continued, his voice moving above her as he repositioned, hiding in plain sight, saving random strangers while the people who actually mattered stayed dead. Do you know how long I've been watching you, Brennan? 18 months. Ever since a contact in the VA system recognized your face in an old deployment photo and called me. 18 months. The whole thing had been constructed long before Marcus Webb appeared in her trauma bay. Every piece deliberately placed to create this exact moment. You used your nephew as bait, Anna said, trying to keep him talking while she calculated angles. You shot him, nearly killed him, just to prove I had these abilities. Marcus volunteered. He wanted to help avenge Tyler. A pause. Brave kid. Kind of reminds me of his uncle that way. Webb's voice was directly above her now. She looked up. He was leaning over the catwalk railing, pistol aimed at her face. Patient. Certain. Goodbye, Lieutenant Brennan. The factory's entrance exploded inward. Tactical lights flooded the space. Voices commanded in the clipped cadence of military operators. Webb spun toward the breach and Anna grabbed a length of rebar from the floor and hurled it at his head. It caught him in the shoulder, ruined his aim, sent 2 wild shots into the ceiling. Then he was running, disappearing deeper into the factory, while armed figures swarmed through the entrance. Someone grabbed Anna's arm and pulled her upright. Captain Cross, furious and visibly relieved in equal measure. Are you completely insane? He pushed her toward the exit. We tracked your phone. Did you genuinely think we wouldn't notice when you left the hospital? Anna tried to argue. Her legs gave out instead. She sat down hard on the concrete while an agent checked her for injuries. From deeper in the factory, Cross's teams coordinated the search clearing levels, sealing exits. 5 minutes later, an agent called in that they had found a tunnel to the storm drain system. Webb was gone. Alvarez arrived with her arm in a sling and 0 patience for anyone who tried to tell her to stay in her car. Cross was mid-argument with 2 of his agents when the black SUVs arrived and settled every discussion by sheer presence. A tall woman in her 60s emerged from the lead vehicle. Gray hair, severe bun, immaculate suit. She moved through the assembled federal personnel the way a cold front moves through a weather system. Everything simply rearranged itself to accommodate her passage. Captain Cross. Her voice could have flash-frozen the Detroit River. I wasn't expecting you, which implies you didn't keep me informed about this operation, which we both know you didn't. She walked past him and stopped directly in front of Anna, studying her with clinical detachment. Lieutenant Anna Brennan, she said. Killed in action, Kandahar Province, Afghanistan, 12 years ago. Except here you are, very much alive, and creating me a considerable amount of paperwork. Anna said nothing. I'm Deputy Director Hammond, the woman continued. I'm the person who ordered Colonel Harlow to classify the Kandahar incident. I'm the person who had you declared dead rather than bringing you home. And I'm the person who is going to decide what happens to you next. She dismissed Cross with a gesture, leaving only Harlow, who had apparently discharged himself from the ICU against every piece of medical advice he had been given as a witness. You have questions, Hammond said. Ask them. Why did you bury me? Because 12 years ago, the intelligence community was managing a scandal involving unauthorized medical experiments on soldiers. Multiple programs were shut down. Careers ended. People went to prison. Hammond's expression remained precisely calibrated. And then you appeared a combat medic who could heal through touch. who had survived injuries that should have killed her, who represented either a genuine biological anomaly or evidence of another program we didn't know about. There were people in positions of power who would have taken you apart to find out which. So you made me disappear. I gave you a chance to walk away and build a new life. Hammond's voice sharpened slightly. Most people in your situation don't get that option. Anna looked at her for a long moment. What about now? What happens now that everyone knows I exist? That depends on what you want. Hammond considered. I can make you disappear again. New identity, new location, clean slate. Webb will keep looking, but we can make it very difficult for him to find you. She paused. Or you help us catch him. Work with Cross's team. Use yourself as bait under controlled conditions, and end this before more innocent people get hurt. And if I survive? Then we have a conversation about how someone with your abilities might serve in ways that don't involve hiding. Hammond produced a business card and held it out. 24 hours to decide. After that, I make the decision for you. She returned to her convoy and departed, leaving Anna alone in the industrial dark with a choice that was no choice at all. She called Dr. Alvarez. How big a favor? Alvarez asked. The kind that could get you fired or arrested or both. A pause. Where are you? They sat in Alvarez's kitchen at 2 a.m, coffee going cold between them, and Anna talked. She explained everything: Kandahar, the ambush, the evacuation decision Harlow had made, and the one she had survived, the abilities she had discovered, and the 12 years she had spent hiding them. Alvarez listened without interrupting. When Anna finished, she picked up a kitchen knife and drew the blade across her own palm before Anna could stop her. Show me. Anna stared at the bleeding cut, then at the woman holding it out to her. Prove I didn't just risk my career for nothing, Alvarez said calmly. Heal me. Anna grabbed a dish towel, applied pressure, then placed her palm against the wound. The familiar sensation arrived weaker than it had been, muted by exhaustion and overuse, but still present. She felt the severed tissue, the traumatized nerve endings. She reached for them, coaxing the body's own mechanisms to accelerate. The kitchen lights flickered, the temperature dipped, and beneath Anna's hand, the laceration closed not completely, but the bleeding stopped, and what should have required sutures now looked days old rather than seconds. Alvarez pulled her hand back slowly and stared at her palm. There were tears on her face. I know what it costs, Anna said. Her hands were shaking. Every time I use this, it takes something out of me. The bigger the injury, the more it takes. If I push too far, then we figure out the limits, Alvarez said. Her voice had shifted into the commanding register she used to overrule surgeons twice her age. We create a protocol. You're not going to burn yourself out trying to save everyone if I have anything to say about it. Anna's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. 3 words. Tomorrow night. Mercy Ridge. She showed it to Alvarez, who read it and nodded once, jaw tightened. He's forcing my hand, Anna said. If I don't show up, he starts killing the night shift until I do. Then we make sure when he shows up, he's the one who gets the surprise. Alvarez pulled out her own phone and started making calls. I'm reaching out to everyone I trust. We lock down that hospital, position Cross's teams, and when Webb walks in, we're ready. He'll expect a trap. Of course he will, but he'll come anyway because this was never really about killing you cleanly. It was always about making a statement, and statements require an audience. Anna looked at her across the kitchen table and felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Not safety, she was too honest with herself for that, but something adjacent to it, something that felt like not being alone. By the time the following evening arrived, the plan was as solid as circumstances allowed. Cross had positioned his teams throughout the hospital with the cooperation of hospital security. The overnight staff who had been read into the situation had been given the option to leave. Most had stayed, including Holloway, who had shown up in Alvarez's office that afternoon looking like he had spent the day swallowing something difficult. The siege, when it came, followed Webb's playbook exactly: the fire alarm, the power cut, the theatrical fog designed to trigger evacuation into his killing ground. What he had not planned for was Anna understanding his logic well enough to counter it. When the walls of the operating room began leaking sedative gas, Anna pulled Alvarez to the floor and crawled for the maintenance corridor. They made the elevator. They took it up, fighting the ancient manual controls, until Webb cut the cable, and the emergency brakes screamed them to a halt between floors. They climbed out into the lobby. Cross found them, led them toward the surgical wing, 4th floor, operating room 7, the same number as the bay where this had started. And then Cross's radio died. Signal jammed, and Webb's voice came through the sealed door. "I cut the main power and the backup generators. Your federal friends are scrambling. More than enough time for us to finish our conversation." Gas hissed through the ventilation. Cross went down. Harlow, who had dragged himself out of the ICU in a hospital gown with his IV still trailing, grabbed Anna's arm before her legs could give out. "Stop," he said quietly. "You're killing yourself. I can save them. You can't save everyone." His voice was rough with pain and 12 years of living with exactly that knowledge. "I learned that the hard way, and I am not going to watch you make the same mistake." The darkness took her again. She woke in federal custody. Clean room, actual medical equipment, 3 familiar faces. The explosion was real, Alvarez said. Her arm was in a sling, but his timing was off. Most of us had already moved to the East Wing when the charges went off. "Webb?" Anna asked. "Federal custody," Cross said, his head bandaged. "We found him exactly where you left him, paralyzed on the floor. Medical team says his nervous system is recovering. They're calling it an anomaly." He paused. "Easier than the truth." Harlow stood by the window, looking out at a city that had no idea what had happened in its hospital overnight. "Hammond wants to talk to you," he said. "She's your best option right now, Anna. She may have buried you once, but she also kept you alive." Hammond arrived with her usual precision. She heard Anna's conditions without visible surprise. "Full disclosure, no more buried reports. Everything about Kandahar, public record. Marcus Webb's nephew taken care of. College fund, medical care, whatever he needed. He had volunteered for his uncle's plan out of loyalty, and that loyalty deserved better than punishment. And Colonel Harlow full immunity. No investigations, no career consequences. He had made an impossible choice in an impossible situation, and he had done what he thought would keep her alive." "That deserved to mean something," agreed Hammond said. "All of it." She stood to leave. "Welcome back to the world, Lieutenant Brennan," she said. "Try not to destroy it." Harlow sat beside Anna's bed after Hammond left, and they didn't speak for a long time. 2 people who had each been buried in their own way, finding the difficult provisional territory of something that wasn't quite forgiveness, but wasn't the absence of it either. "You didn't have to do that," Harlow said finally. "Ask for immunity for me. You saved my life twice this week. Seemed like a reasonable exchange. I abandoned you in Kandahar. You made a choice under impossible circumstances." She looked at him. "I understand that now. What I still don't understand is why you surfaced. 6 months ago, you started looking into me. Why?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because I heard about the nurse at Mercy Ridge who kept saving impossible cases, and I realized that my decision to leave you behind, the one I've never stopped carrying, had actually given you a chance to build a life. I wanted to make sure you got to keep it, by getting yourself blown up by an IED. That part," he admitted, with the ghost of something that had once been a smile, "was not in the plan." The door opened. Alvarez entered without knocking because Alvarez never knocked. "Webb is gone," she said. Silence. 20 minutes ago. Guard found unconscious. Cell empty. He accessed the security system and walked out. She held up her phone. Security footage. Then she handed Anna a manila envelope that had been delivered to the front desk. Inside was a photograph, Anna's apartment building, and Raymond Webb standing in front of it, close enough that the camera had caught the certainty on his face. On the back, in block letters, "You can't save everyone, but you'll try anyway. That's what makes this fun." Anna stared at the photograph for a long time. Then she set it down on the bedside table, face down. She looked at Harlow, at Cross, at Alvarez, standing by the door with her arm in a sling and her expression set like concrete. "All right," Anna said quietly. She swung her legs off the bed. "Let's finish it."